This week, a new ETF was launched. It's an ETF that combines gold and Bitcoin. This is like a wet dream for a Bitcoiner, right? It's like the final validation that Bitcoin is at the same level as gold.
I think gold is the old Bitcoin, basically.
If you are in Wall Street, if you are a hedge fund, you should look at this because it opens an opportunity to say, okay, I'll be the first one. What if I launch a Bitcoin gold ETF? If you are starting a crypto company in Latin America, you should set up shop in the US, in the countries where you'll operate, and also you need to take a look at El Salvador because maybe it could be super beneficial for you. Welcome everybody, another episode of Frontera Roundup. This is a podcast where we analyze the most important news in Latin America this week in crypto, obviously. I'm Mav, co-founder and CEO of Bando. I'm with my good friend Kush. He's the founder of Odisea. Man, how's everything? How are you?
GM, I'm doing well, man. Happy to be here with you another day. I think, things are just in a good rhythm right now on the sort of Latin America crypto front, so can't complain. How are you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there are a lot of long-term things cooking, but this was a slow week. I think that there was not a lot of things happening, but the long-term things cooking is the exciting part. So we're gonna talk a little bit about it. And remember to subscribe to the newsletter. We're writing the best crypto content about Latin America in English. Today I had a call with a VC, like a really reputable VC, and this person validated the thing that we're doing. He told me that our articles are the best. It's a really comprehensive landscape of the region in English with foot like boots on the ground. So really bullish about it. And dude, I'd love to start this week talking about some updates of Odisea Labs. Tell us what's happening. These are really exciting news.
Yeah, so we just onboarded one of the sort of probably most important hires that we've done to date. And we welcomed Sebastián Diaz Mesa onto our team as the Chief Acceleration Officer. So Seba was previously the CEO and Executive Director of Startup Chile, which is one of, if not the best, acceleration program in Latin America. They've generated over $2 billion in value across the region through their teams. Work with 500 startups a year. Very work with they have sort of some institutional funds that they allocate behind their teams as well. So Sebas is going to be leading all of our acceleration efforts, basically everything from like education through to a lot of programs that we have in the works. So I'm super excited. And being able to like really lean in on his expertise is great. So I'm curious, like, what do you think of Startup Chile, and how it fits into the wider sort of acceleration landscape in Latin America?
Maybe for people that are not from Latin America, this might sound weird, but actually Chile is one of the most advanced countries in the region about regarding entrepreneurship and startups. For years, Chile was the benchmark on how to do or how to start technology companies in the region. Although there are not a lot of really known Chilean companies, maybe people know more obviously Nubank or Mercado Libre. Those are the two giants of the region, but definitely the Chilean ecosystem is one of the most active ones.
And a funny story about Chile and Frontera and Startup Chile and Sebas is that Melius, which is a Brazilian company we've been talking a lot about, was actually incubated at Startup Chile.
Oh, really? Amazing. So
Yeah, so
I
full
think
circle.
full circle, definitely. The micro strategy of Latin America was incubated in Startup Chile. And yeah, I think that that's the key message. Chile has been one of the most important countries around entrepreneurship. All of these acceleration efforts, you're going to be focused because your thesis is frontier technologies in frontier markets, right? So, how's that happening?
Yeah, I think we like have a really strong edge in Latin America, and at the same time, you don't want to close yourself off to the universe of possibilities, right? And so I think that's like always really important when you think about your investment thesis. Is this is and it's intentionally not like crypto in Latin America, but rather it's like frontier technologies and frontier markets because that is wide enough that it allows you to look at a number of other deals, but also specific enough that we can justify our edge in Latin America. So yeah, man. I mean, basically super bullish hire. Really great to have Sebastian on board as well. And as we start announcing things too, I'm sure we'll bring Sebas on to come and talk a little bit about how we're thinking about these different programs we're running. But yeah, man, let's get into it. Let's see what else is on the docket.
Yeah. So, this week, I think that we've been chatting about how Brazilians are maybe one of the most advanced markets when regarding stocks or well, basically any type of market. The Brazilian Solana ETF was the first one in the world. The Bitcoin ETF was one of the first in the world, and it's really interesting to see this because I think that they mark some trend on how other institutions and countries can execute financial instruments. This week, a new ETF was launched that is a combination. It's an ETF that combines gold and Bitcoin. This is like a wet dream for a Bitcoiner, right? It's like the final validation that Bitcoin is at the same level as gold. And obviously, this is just a first indication because Brazil is not the biggest market. It's an emerging market, but I really like to analyze this because could this be an indication that, for example, someone like BlackRock will launch an ETF that combines Bitcoin and gold? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so actually, I think there's two items that come to mind for me here on this particular news item. So, one, a Bloomberg reporter recently said that, oh, look, it was Figma filed. Figma was recently filing for their public listing, and they had a whole bunch of basically Bitcoin ETFs holdings listed on their balance sheet, and then a lot of USDC as well. And so I think what these ETFs sort of unlock is essentially people to be able to access these alternative assets in a very seamless capacity, right? So Figma's already doing it. I'm sure a lot of upcoming listings will showcase that as well. That's one really exciting piece of news. The other thing that I think is also really great is there was a Bloomberg reporter that was recently talking about gold and said, "Oh, look, um, this is how physical Bitcoin has been performing. So it's no longer Bitcoin being digital gold, but gold is now physical Bitcoin." So I thought like that shift is also really fascinating when we start thinking about how do we shift those narratives around like what these assets mean and what they represent.
Yeah, and do you think do you think it's an indication that maybe BlackRock could launch something like this? Do
I
you think
think
that's even possible?
I don't see a reason why they wouldn't, right? Like having sort of a basket just makes a lot of sense. Like it's like the big purpose behind a lot of ETFs as well is essentially saying, look, like we want to give people diversified access to a basket of different assets all in one. I generally like. I think it'd make a lot of sense for this to occur.
And the main discussion is about if Bitcoin is like the new gold for these financial institutions.
I think gold is the old Bitcoin, basically, and I
Mm.
think that's where it's heading, and that's like what this Bloomberg reporter was saying, right? It's like we don't talk anymore about like really old stocks, right? It's all about sort of what's new and what's actually coming up in the market. So that's a bit of my talks.
For people listening to Frontera, I think it's something. It's like an edge. You know, Brazil has been front running the traditional markets in their ETFs with obvious moves. The Bitcoin ETF, Solana ETF, and now this Bitcoin Gold ETF is something really interesting. And if you are in Wall Street, if you are a hedge fund, you should look at this because it opens an opportunity for maybe not BlackRock, but maybe a smaller ETF institution to say, okay, I'll be the first one. I want to differentiate between gold or between the already tens of ETFs of Bitcoin ETFs. What if I launch a Bitcoin Gold ETF? You know, so this is the edge that we bring to you if you're listening to Frontera.
Well, and also it's like you do have to keep sort of innovating here a lot on the edges, right? And so like staking has been a really big narrative, for example, for ETFs and Solana ETFs is can you natively embed this? And I think we'll generally just start to see like a more expressive range of assets being brought on board. I just listened to a presentation and a talk that David Hoffman and Hayden Adams were doing at Permissionless. And one of the key takeaways from that conversation was like that Hayden mentioned was we want asset issuers to be a strong priority for how we think about onboarding capital into crypto, right? And so it's like asset issuers in particular are the ones who I think will have a lot of leverage in a lot of these discussions when we think about, okay, well, instead of issuing it on a traditional exchange, why don't you do it on a crypto native one, right? We just saw Robinhood, for example, launch tokenized stocks on top of Arbitrum, and that was, I think, again, these are exactly the kinds of innovations that I think just make a lot of sense. And what the teams like Barry, right, who I know you're very familiar with, you guys went through the Outlier Ventures program together, but those types of I think true innovations in the financial landscape, I think will be really exciting for a lot of the region too. So yeah, man, I'm bullish. Like again, it's like right now there's some sort of huge unlocks happening at a systemic level, I think in Latin America, at least over the course of the last week, but it's a lot of the foundation that's being laid both across the wider crypto ecosystem, but that eventually trickles down into the region too, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And let's keep moving to the next big news, or well, news of the week. As I said, it was kind of slow, but there's Paulo Ardoino, who's the CEO of Tether, saying reviewing the first design pitch for the Tether Tower in El Salvador. You were in El Salvador. I think that you met with a couple of people from Tether. What the hell is the design, like the El Salvador Tether Tower?
So yeah, I was in El Salvador at the Plan B Bitcoin conference where they were actually talking about this. I think this is great because Tether is essentially just like release their, as they start rolling out their engagement with El Salvador, moving their global headquarters there and so forth, because they have this very pro crypto friendly policy. They're saying, well, look, we want to meaningfully invest into this country, right? And we don't just want to be like an extractive dynamic. And so they're putting a lot of resources towards saying, okay, how do we move the country forward here in such a way that allows us to think deeply about what economic value creation looks like. And I think it's Bukele's thesis essentially playing out here, where they're saying, look, we don't just want to be like a place for people to come and set up their headquarters, but rather want to be an innovation hub. So I think the Tether Tower will be a kind of core container of that, and really, really excited to see that unfold. I'm curious, like, what do you think about this whole Tether move and the Tether Tower and so on and so forth?
Well, I think that Tether needed, well, like a country or some regulation where they could land. And El Salvador has been moving really fast, helping companies around the world establish their business. And also, I think that an important part of everything that El Salvador is doing is embracing crypto. And now they have the largest, one of the largest crypto companies being like the flagship for crypto in the country. I think that when technology companies land in a, or when certain type of companies land in a country and they establish, there's positive impact all that overspills to other sectors of the economy of that country. When we see something like Singapore, where their thesis was not on technology but on financial, like being like a financial hub for Asia, right? And that overspilled a lot of value and benefits for the country. So I think that what Najib Bukele is doing is it's playing out. I mean, you can see the facts and it's working. I also know that, for example, other big companies look to El Salvador. When Bitso launched their Web3 wallet, if you read the terms and conditions, you signed the terms and conditions with a company from El Salvador. So I mean, it's Bitso has an entity there, obviously, because it was like in the terms and conditions. Tether. So I think that it's definite. I think that if you are starting a company, a crypto company in Latin America, you should look to set up shop in the US, in the countries where you'll operate, and also you need to take a look at El Salvador because maybe it could be super beneficial for you.
Fully agree. Yeah, I think I don't know. They have a ton of incentives for people to, and in fact, I think we should bring somebody on to talk a little bit more about what's happening in the country as well. I know they have a very kind of mature ecosystem there, so I'm sure we'll plug them in. Cool. So what do we have next?
Well, we've been covering a lot Bolivia in Frontera because it was a country where crypto was basically banned. Users could not interact with crypto, and they lift off the ban. And basically, there's a lot of traction and a lot of transactions happening in Bolivia. So the news is crypto payments soar 630% in Bolivia. Central bank reports four $430 million in transactions since they lift ban. So what's the story here? So the key message is as soon as any country enables crypto, stable coins are have a lot of demand. And that's something that we've discussed a lot. There's infinite demand for dollars outside of the US, specifically in emerging markets. And well, Bolivia is a perfect example. As soon as they enabled, or they enabled users to and people to transact with stablecoins, they've transacted more than $430 million. That's not a lot if you see like the US volumes, but from being nothing to having those transactions, it's something significant, and it keeps growing month over month, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, look, we've covered extensively Bolivia to the point where we've even viralize fake news on this podcast. But yeah, I mean, look, in fact, I think it's really cool to see Bolivia like emerge. We were talking about Chile, for example, and it's sort of a sleeping giant. I think Bolivia just has been totally pinned and needs crypto. And I think that, yeah, I've spoken with a lot of big companies that are now had never previously thought about Bolivia. Now they're saying, hey, what's going on in Bolivia? Can you help us like think about, how do we engage there, and how do we, should we be investing in this country and so on, right? So I think that there's generally been like a lot of interest in the country, and I'm excited to see. And there's a lot of builders there as well, actually, funnily enough. I've seen like Mantle's been doing quite a few meetups in Bolivia, and like a lot of people are showing up. So again, it's like this necessity drives these outcomes where people get really engaged with this whole ecosystem.
It's also interesting to see what's the next barrier. I mean, now users can transact in stablecoins and crypto in Bolivia. I think that in the upcoming years we're gonna see more capital controls, maybe for in crypto, as the ones Turkey is pushing this week or in the recent weeks, where they are limiting stablecoin transactions to $5,000 a day, and I think like 45 or $50,000 a month. And that's then again validates the things that we've been doing. Something that I really like of Frontera is that basically all crypto media is American, right? So everyone is like, yeah, let's fucking go stable coins. We need to increase the amount of stable coins in basically everywhere, like USD stable coins. And I'm also super bullish on USD stable coins. But the thing is that, as I've said a lot, stablecoins are the best way to export US debt at low interest rates, right? And if that happens and you combine that with infinite demand for stablecoins in emerging markets, that's also infinite selling pressure for fiat currencies in emerging markets. And that's a doom scenario for a lot of countries with a lot of sovereignty, right? So I think that we are in the middle of, I don't know, maybe it could be a black swan moment for a lot of fiat currencies to go to almost zero if they're not careful. And yeah, it's really exciting to see what's going to happen in the next years.
Totally. Yeah, we like, we sort of go back on this quite a lot, right? But I do feel it's just like this constant unleashing of an acceleration of like FX markets, and it's like where we have more volatile or weaker currencies, like for sure we'll
Yeah.
see a big escape to stables. So nice. Well, this was a short and sweet one. Always, as always, really appreciate sort of coming on here, jamming, and being caught up. Honestly, like just staying up to date on this kind of rapidly evolving landscape, I think is essential. So
Yeah.
awesome chat, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Also, remember, follow us in subscribe to the newsletter. Follow me at Abraham CR. Follow Kush, 0x Kush. And as always, see you next time. Thank you.
Peace.